What's grabbing headlines around the world? Florence Villeneuve is with me.
Hi,
Flo. You're going to start us off with the unrest in Ukraine. A lot of focus on some controversial photos.
That's right. These are photos that the Ukrainian government provided to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe last week, and getting a lot of attention in the international press. This is the International New York Times talking about these photos. Now, Kiev says these photos are evidence that the mysterious armed men that have taken over government buildings in eastern Ukraine, the so-called Green Men, are in fact Russian military and intelligence forces. And if we take a close-up, take a look at a close-up of some of these photos, you can see what Kiev is trying to suggest here. There's one photo, for instance, of a very bearded soldier that was taken allegedly in Georgia in 2008. That's that photo on the left. And the two photos on the right were allegedly show the same soldier in, very recently in eastern Ukraine. The U.S. State Department says this is very compelling evidence, but it's important to note that the Kremlin says it has no involvement whatsoever in what's going on.
You might get an order to shave that beard. Now, moving on to Crimea, there's a lot of focus there also on life after annexation.
That's right. This is another article, very interesting article in the International New York Times today that points out that this transition is happening under the radar as the world's attention is so focused on the east. So what's happening in Crimea? Well, to quote the article, 1 month after the lightning annexation, residents find themselves living not so much in a different state, Russia, as in a perpetual state of confusion. One of the big questions is about identity, and a lot of residents there are trying to get new passports, but the queues are huge, and on top of that, very few institutions function normally, whether it's banks or courts, etc. Now, a lot of papers are focusing on what the future says for Crimea. What's the plan? Well, Slate says that Vladimir Putin, his grand plan for the economic development in Crimea could involve casinos. This is a very interesting article. This article quotes the draft of a new law that was unveiled yesterday, which designates Crimea as a gambling zone. So this article says that Moscow appears to have hitched Crimea's economic revival on becoming the Black Sea Sin City, which is, of course, Las Vegas.
That's an interesting development. And Flo, here in France, a lot of focus still on the 4 released hostages. They were held, of course, in Syria for 10 months.
That's right, still getting a lot of attention. Libération promises a in-depth account about their liberation. You can see that on the front page. Instead, it gives details about their detention. So far, what the backdrop of their liberation is still a little secret, but a lot of information about their detention. They were held in Aleppo by the Al-Qaeda-linked group ISIL, a group that's made hostage-taking into a very lucrative business, according to Libération. 22 other hostages, at least, from different nationalities were being held with them. Libération says that Syria has become a well-oiled hostage factory. Now, one thing that shocked the French journalist was how professional these hostage takers were, and also they were surprised that there were reportedly some French citizens among them. And this is one aspect that a lot of other papers are focusing on. L'Opinion, for instance, is looking at how the government is reacting to all this. It's talking about the plan that France has against its jihadists, so French jihadists that are fighting, be it in Syria or other areas of the globe as well. According to L'Opinion, about 700 French citizens are currently fighting in jihad across the world. Le Figaro also focuses on this because the government is actually going to lay out a plan at the cabinet meeting tomorrow, and so Le Figaro goes into more detail about just how the government is planning to stop young French people from participating in jihad.
And finally, Flo, something very different from here in France, something women experience quite regularly on the streets of French cities. Can you tell us more about it? Aujourd'hui en France has the details.
That's right. You might have had the unfortunate opportunity to experience this as harassment on the streets. This is the front page of Aujourd'hui en France. It talks about marre des goujats, so that translates as tired of jerks. Now, I've been asking other people in the newsroom, other women, and everyone has experienced this at one point in the streets of Paris. It starts out as compliments, or what seem like compliments, and very quickly can turn into insults if you don't respond positively to someone's invitation to a date or to have a cup of coffee or something. So there's nothing new about this. Why is Aujourd'hui en France talking about it? Well, it's because more and more women are speaking out about it. And recently, a video went viral on the internet. It's called Oppressed Majority. It's by a filmmaker named Eleonore Pourria. Basically, it's a reversed role world where the men are women, the women are men, and it shows just how much harassment women face on a daily basis. And it went really viral, and a lot of media is saying it's because, well, a lot of women can relate to it. And in fact, statistics back it up. According to the National Statistics Bureau, the INSEE, 20% of women are insulted at least one time a year on the streets of France, and especially here in Paris. But Aujourd'hui en France points out it's not just a French problem. It's a problem women face across Europe, across the world, and different countries are trying to tackle this issue in different ways. Belgium is thinking about making such insults punishable in a criminal court. Aujourd'hui en France says that might be a little extreme, but there should be a public debate about this very serious issue.
I think you have to have your own retorts at the ready. Florence Villeminot, thank you very much for bringing us the press review. And now it's time for a roundup of all your sports news here on France 24.